The space station floated in the darkness between two dying stars. It was called Orion 7, and it was the largest structure ever built by any species in the known galaxy. Millions of beings lived there, worked there, and once every 10 years they gathered there to watch the greatest fighters in 12 star systems try to kill each other. Galactic Combat Tournament had existed for 300 years. In all that time, one species had dominated the arena. The Eldrani were tall, beautiful, and absolutely deadly. Their silver skin could stop most blades. Their bones were 3 times stronger than steel. Their 4 eyes could see movement that other species could not even imagine. They were born to fight, and they had never lost a championship match. Princess Veela stood at the window of her private quarters and looked down at the registration hall. Far below, thousands of fighters from dozens of worlds were signing their names, hoping for glory, expecting death. She had killed 47 opponents in her career. She remembered each one, not with guilt but with the cold satisfaction of a job done well. Her advisor, an old warrior named Torin, entered the room without knocking. He had earned that right through 60 years of service to the royal family. "The new species has arrived," he said. Veela did not turn from the window. "Which one?" "Humans from the planet Earth. They joined the galactic community only 5 years ago." Now Veela turned. Her 4 eyes showed something rare for her: curiosity. "I have heard of them. Small creatures. No natural weapons. No armor. They die easily." "Yes," Torin nodded slowly. "Their bodies are fragile. They cannot survive in extreme heat or cold. They need to breathe a very specific mixture of gases. They are slow compared to most species." And yet what?" The old warrior was quiet for a moment. "They have a strange reputation. The traders who deal with them say they are unpredictable, dangerous in ways that are hard to explain." Veela laughed. It was not a kind sound. "Dangerous, Torin. I could break one of them with my smallest finger. What danger could they possibly offer?" She walked past him and out the door. She wanted to see these humans for herself. The registration hall was chaos. Fighters of every shape and size pushed against each other, shouting in 100 different languages. The translation devices worked hard to keep up. Veela moved through the crowd like a knife through water. Being stepped aside when they saw her silver skin, her royal markings, the cold confidence in her eyes. She found the human delegation in a quiet corner. There were only 3 of them, 2 women in strange uniforms covered with symbols, and 1 man who stood slightly apart from the others. The man was not impressive. He was shorter than Veela by at least a head. His skin was a soft brown color that looked like it would bruise easily. He had only 2 eyes, both of them a dark color that revealed nothing. His body was covered in old scars, white lines, and rough patches that spoke of past damage. He was signing his name on the tournament roster. Veela walked up to him and stopped close enough to make her presence impossible to ignore. The 2 women with him tensed, but the man simply finished writing and looked up at her. "You are the human fighter," Veela said. It was not a question. "Jake Miller," he said. His voice was calm. "Too calm. And you must be Princess Veela. I watched your last championship match. You killed that fighter from the Broken Moons in 11 seconds. Very impressive." Around them, other fighters had stopped to watch. They knew what was coming. Vela enjoyed these moments, the fear in the eyes of lesser beings, the knowledge that they were standing before a predator, but there was no fear in Jake Miller's eyes, only something that looked almost like interest. You should not be here. Vela said, your species is not ready for this level of competition. You will die in your first match and your death will mean nothing. Jake smiled. It was a small smile, the kind that did not reach his eyes, maybe, but I signed up anyway. You are either very brave or very stupid, where I come from. Those are often the same thing. Vela leaned closer. She wanted him to feel her presence, to understand exactly what he was facing. Let me be clear, little human, you cannot survive a minute against me, not 1 minute. I have fought beings 10 times your size and strength. I have killed warriors who trained for 100 years. You are nothing. Withdraw now. Save yourself the embarrassment of dying in front of the entire galaxy. The hall had gone silent. Every eye was on them. Even the officials had stopped their work to watch. Jake Miller looked at the princess for a long moment. Then he looked around at all the faces watching them, faces that expected him to break, faces that were already planning how they would tell this story later. The foolish human who thought he could compete with real warriors. No, he said simply. Vela blinked. It was not the answer she expected. No, no, I will not withdraw. I came here to fight and I will fight. Maybe you are right. Maybe I will die in the first round. Maybe I will not last 10 seconds against whoever I face, but I will not quit before I even try. He picked up his registration form and handed it to the official, who took it with shaking hands. See you in the arena, princess, Jake said. Then he walked away, his 2 companions following close behind. Vela stood very still around her. The noise of the hall slowly returned. Fighters went back to their business. Officials continued their work, but something had changed. Something small but important. For the first time in many years, Princess Vela of the Eldrani Empire felt something she did not recognize. It was not fear, not exactly. It was more like the feeling before a storm. When the air grows heavy and the sky turns dark. She did not know what was coming, but she knew it would be interesting. Torin appeared at her side. An unusual human, he said quietly. Dead human, Vela replied, but even as she said it, she was not entirely sure. She believed it. The tournament would begin in 3 days. And somewhere in the back of her mind, a small voice whispered that perhaps she should take this opponent more seriously than she had planned. She ignored that voice. It was a mistake she would come to regret. The tournament began on a cold morning. Though on a space station, morning was just a number on a clock. Jake Miller stood in the fighter preparation area and watched the screens that showed the arena above. A creature with 6 arms was fighting something that looked like a living shadow. The crowd of 50,000 screamed for blood. Lisa Park sat behind him, surrounded by screens and equipment. She was the smartest person Jake had ever met. She had 3 degrees in biology, 2 in physics, and she could watch a fighter move once and understand exactly how their body worked. She was also his best friend, and the only reason he had made it this far. Your first opponent is a Tovian, she said without looking up from her screens. Big, strong, slow. He relies on his thick skin to absorb damage, but his joints are weak. Hit him in the knees And he goes down. Jake nodded. He had studied the Torvians for months. He knew where to hit. He knew how to move. He knew how to win. How is our princess doing? He asked. Lisa pulled up another screen. It showed Princess Vila in her own preparation area. She was doing some kind of stretching exercise that made her body bend in ways that should have been impossible. She won her first match in 8 seconds, broke her opponent's neck with one kick. The crowd loved it. Jake watched the princess move. She was beautiful in a terrible way, like a storm or a flood or any other force of nature that could kill you without even noticing. She is good, he said. She is the best, Lisa corrected him. In 300 years, no Eldrani royal has ever lost a championship match. Their bones are almost unbreakable. Their reflexes are faster than anything I have ever measured, and they train from the moment they can walk. Sounds scary. It should be. Jake, I need you to understand something. If you face her in the final round, you will probably die. I have run the numbers 1,000 times. Her speed, her strength, her technique, you cannot match any of it. Jake turned to look at his friend. Her face was worried. She had known him for 10 years, and she had never seen him face anything like this. Then we will have to find another way, he said. The preliminary rounds passed quickly. Jake fought 4 times in the first week. He won each match, but he did not win easily. He took hits. He bled. He limped back to his quarters each night with new bruises and new cuts. The other species watched and laughed. The human was surviving, yes, but only barely. He was lucky. He was weak. He would fall soon. But Lisa saw something different. She watched every recording of every fight, and she noticed things that others missed. Jake was not fighting at full strength. He was holding back. He was testing his opponents, learning their movements, letting them think they were winning. You are playing a dangerous game, she told him one night. Jake was lying on a medical table while a machine healed a deep cut on his arm. I know if you make one mistake you are dead. I know that. 2. Then why not fight at full strength and finish them quickly? Jake was quiet for a moment. Because I want them to underestimate me. All of them, especially her. On the other side of the station, Torin was doing his own research. The old warrior had lived long enough to know that the most dangerous enemies were often the ones you did not take seriously. And something about the humans bothered him. He accessed the galactic database and searched for information about Earth. What he found made him stop breathing for a moment. The planet was hostile, not in the way that some planets were hostile, with acid rain or crushing gravity. Earth was hostile in a different way. It was a world where everything competed for survival. The weather could kill you, the animals could kill you, even the plants could kill you, and worst of all, the humans spent most of their history killing each other. Torin watched recordings of human wars. He saw soldiers marching through snow and sand and mud. He saw fighters training in small rooms, hitting bags filled with sand until their hands bled. He saw athletes running until they collapsed, then getting up and running more. He watched a human sport called boxing. 2 men in a ring hitting each other with their fists until one could not stand anymore. The crowd cheered not for quick victories, but for fighters who could take punishment and keep going. What are you looking at? Torin turned to find Princess Vila standing behind him. She had come silently, as all Eldrani warriors could. human training methods. He said. Vila looked at the screen. Human was doing something called push-ups, lifting his body weight over and over with just his arms. This is supposed to impress me. No, princess. This is supposed to worry you. Why? Torin turned off the screen and faced her. Because they do not train to master combat, they train to survive anything. There is a difference. Vila laughed. Survive against me, old friend. You worry too much. I have faced opponents from 100 worlds, warriors with claws that could cut steel, fighters with poison in their blood, soldiers who felt no pain. I killed them all. One soft human will not change that. Perhaps, Torin said, but I have noticed something in his fights. He is learning. Each match, he is better, not by much, but enough. He watches his opponents the way a hunter watches prey, and when he is hit, when he is hurt, when he should fall down and stay down, he keeps getting up every time. Vila considered this for a moment, then she shook her head. It does not matter. Speed beats learning, strength beats endurance. When I face him, and I will face him, it will be over in seconds. She walked away, confident as always. Torin watched her go and felt something cold in his stomach. He had seen many warriors in his long life. He had watched champions rise and fall, and he had learned one truth that most fighters never understood. The most dangerous opponent was not the strongest or the fastest. The most dangerous opponent was the one who simply refused to lose. He looked at the blank screen where the human training video had been playing. What are you, Jake Miller? He whispered to the empty room. 3 days later, both Jake and Vela won their semi-final matches. The championship round was set, human versus Eldrani, the soft creature against the perfect warrior. The galaxy was ready to watch a slaughter. They did not know they were about to witness something else entirely. Jake Miller grew up in a city called Detroit. It was not a kind place. The winters were cold enough to kill, the summers were hot enough to make you sick, and the streets were full of people who had learned early that the world did not care if they lived or died. His father left when Jake was 6. His mother worked 3 jobs to keep food on the table. By the time he was 10, Jake understood something that would shape the rest of his life. Nobody was coming to save him. If he wanted to survive, he would have to do it himself. He found his way to boxing gym when he was 12. It was a small place in a bad part of town. The heat did not work in winter. The air conditioning did not work in summer. The equipment was old and broken, but the men who trained there were serious, and they taught Jake his first lesson. Pain was just information. It told you that something was wrong, but it did not mean you had to stop. You could keep going. You could push through. You could train your body and your mind to accept the pain and move past it. Jake trained every day. After school, he ran in the morning. Before the sun came up, he hit the heavy bag until his hands bled, and then he wrapped them up and hit it some more. He learned to box, then wrestling, then something called Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Each style taught him something different. Each style made him more complete. By the time he was 18, he was fighting in small competitions for cash prizes. By 22, he had joined the Marine Corps. By 25, he had seen combat in 3 different countries and learned that real fighting was nothing like the movies. Real fighting was ugly. It was desperate. It was about surviving the next second and then the second after. That there was no honor in it. There was only winning and losing, living and dying. When he left the Marines, he started fighting professionally, mixed martial arts. They called it a sport, where any technique was allowed. Punching, kicking, wrestling, choking. The best fighters were not masters of one style. They were dangerous in every situation. Jake became a champion. Then he became a legend, and when Earth made contact with alien civilizations and learned about the galactic combat tournament, he volunteered for something new. The Combat Representative Program was created to give humanity a presence on the galactic stage. Earth could not compete with alien technology or alien numbers, but maybe, just maybe, they could compete in the arena. Jake spent 2 years training specifically for alien opponents. He studied their bodies, their fighting styles, their weaknesses. Lisa Park led the research team, analyzing biological data from 100 different species. They learned things that no human had ever known. They learned that the Eldrani, for all their strength and speed, had a nerve cluster at the base of their skull that was extremely sensitive. A single well-placed strike could cause temporary paralysis. They learned that Eldrani warriors trained in formal styles passed down through generations. They were perfect within those styles, but they had never faced anything outside of them. They had never fought someone who did not follow the rules. Most importantly, they learned about Princess Viola's signature move, spinning strike that used her entire body weight. It was beautiful and deadly. Every championship match she had ever won ended with that strike. Lisa showed Jake the recordings. Over and over, they watched the princess spin and kill. Over and over, they looked for a weakness. There, Lisa said, finally pointing at the screen. Right there, do you see it? Jake leaned closer. The princess was in mid-spin, her body a blur of silver motion, and for just a fraction of a second, there was a gap, a tiny space between her arm and her body, a moment when she was committed to the movement and could not change direction. If you step inside that gap, Lisa said, you will be too close for the strike to hit properly, and her nerve cluster will be exposed. Weld, how long do I have? Lisa did the calculation. About 2/10 of a second. Jake was silent. 2/10 of a second, less than the blink of an eye. One chance to step into the right spot and deliver one punch. If he was too slow, he would die. If he was too fast, he would miss. Everything had to be perfect. Can you do it? Lisa asked. Jake stood up and walked to the training area. A machine was set up there, programmed to simulate the spinning strike at full. Elder, let us find out, he said. For the next 72 hours, Jake practiced the counter. He slept in short bursts. He ate without tasting the food. Every moment that he was awake, he was watching the machine spin and trying to step into that impossible gap. He failed hundreds of times. The machine hit him so many times that his body turned purple with bruises. Lisa begged him to rest. He ignored her. On the morning of the championship match, Jake finally completed the counter for the 500th time in a row. No mistakes, no hesitation. His body had learned the movement so deeply that he did not need to think about it anymore. Lisa watched him with wonder and something close to fear. She had worked with many fighters over the years, but she had never seen anything like this. The aliens train until they get it right, she said softly. We train until we cannot get it wrong. Jake wiped the sweat from his face and looked at the door that led to the arena. In a few hours he would face the greatest warrior in the galaxy. He would probably die. He had accepted that possibility long ago, but he had done everything he could. He had prepared for everything he could prepare for, and that was all any human could do. Time to go, he said. Lisa nodded and started gathering their equipment. As they walked toward the arena, she asked one final question. Are you scared? Jake thought about it for a moment. Yes, he admitted, but I was scared in Detroit too. I was scared in the Marines. I was scared in every fight I ever had. The fear does not go away. You just learn to work with it. The arena doors opened and the roar of 50,000 aliens washed over them like a wave. Jake Miller walked forward to meet his destiny. The arena was a circle of white sand surrounded by walls of pure energy. Beyond those walls, 50,000 beings watched from seats that rose up toward the distant ceiling. Screens floated in the air, showing the fight from every angle across the galaxy. Billions more watched from their homes, their ships, their stations. Princess Vila entered first. She walked like a queen, which she was. Her silver skin caught the light and threw it back in brilliant patterns. Her 4 eyes scanned the crowd, accepting their worship as her natural right. She wore the traditional armor of Eldrani royalty, thin plates of black metal that covered her vital points without limiting her movement. The crowd screamed her name. They had watched her fight for 20 years. They had seen her kill warriors from every corner of the galaxy. They knew what was about to happen. Then Jake Miller walked in. He wore simple black shorts and nothing else. His body was covered in old scars, white lines and rough patches that told the story of 100 fights. He was smaller than Vila by almost a head. His skin was soft. His bones were breakable. He had no armor, no weapons, no obvious advantages. The crowd did not scream his name. Instead, they laughed. Some of them made sounds of pity. A few made bets on how long he would last. The most generous guess was 30 seconds. Jake walked to the center of the arena and stopped 3 m from the princess. Up close, she was even more impressive. Her muscles moved under her silver skin like cables. Her 4 eyes locked onto him with the focus of a predator. You came, she said. Her voice carried through the arena's sound system, letting everyone hear. I thought perhaps you would be wise at the last moment. Jake said nothing. He was breathing slowly, evenly, the way Lisa had taught him. He was letting his body relax, letting his mind empty. He was entering the state where thought and action became the same thing. Very well, Vila said. I will make it quick as a sign of respect. The signal sounded. The fight began. Vela moved first. She was across the distance between them before Jake could blink. Her fist came for his head, a strike that would have crushed his skull like an egg, but Jake was not there. He had started moving the instant her weight shifted, diving to the side, rolling on the sand, coming up in a different position. Vela turned and attacked again and again and again. Her strikes were beautiful and deadly, each one fast enough to kill. Jake avoided most of them. The ones he could not avoid, he deflected using her own momentum to push the blows off target. But he could not avoid everything. Her fist caught his ribs and he felt something crack. Her knee hit his thigh, and his leg went numb. Her elbow scraped across his shoulder, tearing skin and Muscle blood began to flow, Jake's blood red against the white sand. Crowd roared with excitement. This was what they had come to see. The human was dying, the princess was winning. Everything was as it should be. 1 minute passed, Vela stepped back. Confusion on her face for the first time. The human should be dead by now. Or at least unconscious, but he was. Still standing, still moving, still watching her with those two dark eyes that showed no fear. Why do you not fall? She demanded. Jake did not waste breath on an answer. He was counting her attacks, mapping her patterns, waiting for the moment that would decide everything. 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes. The fight continued and the crowd grew quieter. Something was wrong. The human was not winning, but he was not losing either. He was taking damage that would have killed most species 3 times over, and he kept getting up. At 5 minutes, Jake began to fight back. His attacks were not pretty. They were not elegant. They were ugly. Desperate. Human, he hit places that Eldrani warriors considered dishonorable to attack. He used techniques that no fighting style had ever taught. He fought dirty and he fought mean and he fought to survive. Vela took her first real hit, a punch to her throat that made her step back, a kick to her knee that made her stumble, an elbow to her chin that split her silver skin and drew blood, purple blood, the color of Eldrani royalty. The crowd fell completely silent. Nobody had ever made the princess bleed. Nobody had ever lasted this long. Nobody had ever looked at her the way this small, broken human was looking at her. Now 6 minutes. 7 minutes. Both fighters were damaged. Both fighters were tired, but only one of them had trained their entire life to ignore those things. Vela's breathing was heavy, her movements were slower. The perfect technique that had carried her through 300 years of Eldrani dominance was starting to crack. Jake was in worse shape. His ribs were broken, his left eye was swollen shut. Blood covered half his body, but he was still moving, still fighting, still waiting. What are you? Vela whispered. Human, Jake said. It was the first word he had spoken since the fight began. 8 minutes. Vale knew she had to end this. The human was too dangerous. He was learning her patterns, exploiting her weaknesses, doing things that no opponent had ever done before. She had to use her finishing move, the spinning strike that had never failed. She gathered her strength. She planted her feet. She began the spin that had killed 47 warriors. Jake saw it coming. He had seen it 500 times in training. His body knew what to do before his mind could even think. He stepped inside the arc. Time seemed to slow. He could see the gap between her arm and her body, exactly where Lisa had shown him. He could see her nerve cluster exposed for just a fraction of a second. He could see the surprise in her 4 eyes as she realized what was happening. He threw the punch. It was not a beautiful punch. It was not a technical punch. It was a punch thrown by a broken, bleeding human who had nothing left except the refusal to quit, but it landed exactly where it needed to land. Princess Vela of the Eldrani Empire fell to the sand and did not get up. The arena was silent. 50,000 beings stared at something they could not believe. Across the galaxy, billions more watched their screens with open mouths. Jake Miller stood over the fallen princess, swaying on his feet, barely conscious. Blood dripped from his wounds onto the white sand, mixing with the purple blood of his opponent. Then slowly the human delegation began to cheer. It was a small sound at first, just 3 voices in a sea of silence, but it grew and grew and grew. The impossible had happened. The human had won. Princess Veela opened her eyes to find herself lying on the sand. Her body felt strange, disconnected. The nerve strike had disrupted her systems in ways she had never experienced before. She could not move her arms or legs. She could only lie there and look up at the ceiling of the arena. A shadow fell across her face. The human was standing over her, looking down with those 2 dark eyes. Blood covered his body. His breathing was rough and painful. He looked like he should be dead, but he was the one standing, and she was the one lying on the ground. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The crowd was still silent, still trying to understand what they had witnessed. Across the galaxy, commentators were struggling to find words for something that had no words. Then Jake Miller did something that confused everyone. Watching, he extended his hand. Veela stared at the offered hand. In Eldrani culture, the victor took the head of the defeated. It was tradition. It was honor. It was the natural order of things, but the human was not taking her head. He was offering to help her up. "Come on," he said. His voice was weak, barely more than a whisper. "The fight is over." Veela's body was slowly responding to her commands again. Feeling was returning to her limbs. She could have attacked him. He was weak, damaged, barely standing. One good strike would finish him, but she did not attack. Instead, she reached up and took his hand. Jake pulled her to her feet. It took all the strength he had left. They stood facing each other. Princess and the human, the defeated and the victor. "How?" Veela asked. It was the only question that mattered. "Your species has no gifts, no natural weapons, no superior biology. You are soft and slow and fragile. How did you do this?" Jake thought about the question for a moment. Around them, the crowd was beginning to make noise again. Some cheered, some booed, some just stared in shock. But Jake did not hear any of it. He was focused only on the being in front of him. "Where I come from," he said, "everything wants to kill us." Veela frowned. "What do you mean?" "Our planet is hostile. The weather kills us. The animals kill us. The plants kill us. Disease kills us. For most of our history, we killed each other. Everything on Earth is a test of survival." He paused to cough. Blood came up. He ignored it. "We did not evolve to be strong," he continued. "We did not evolve to be fast. We did not evolve to have armor or claws or venom. We evolved to refuse to quit. We evolved to keep going when our bodies told us to stop. We evolved to survive anything, no matter what it takes." Veela was silent. She had faced warriors from 100 worlds, and not one of them had ever spoken to her like this. Not one of them had ever explained their strength in such simple, honest terms. "You trained for this fight," she said. "You prepared specifically for me." Jake nodded. "For 2 years every day, we studied your biology, your fighting style, your signature moves. We found your weaknesses and we practiced exploiting them over and over. Hundreds of times, thousands of times, until my body knew what to do without thinking." "But why? Why go through all that pain? Why risk your life against impossible odds?" Jake smiled. It was a tired smile, the smile of a man who had given everything he had, because that is what humans do. We do not accept impossible. We do not accept defeat. We prepare for everything, and when everything is not enough, we find something more. In the stands, Torin watched the two warriors talking. He had seen the fight from beginning to end. He had watched the human take damage that should have killed him 10 times over. He had watched the human keep getting up, keep fighting, keep refusing to die. Now he understood what he had sensed from the beginning. The humans were not like other species. They did not have natural advantages. They did not have superior genetics. What they had was something more dangerous than any weapon. They had the will to survive anything. The crowd was cheering now, not just the human delegation but others as well, species who had been conquered by the Eldrani, species who had lived in fear of the perfect warriors. They cheered because, for the first time in 300 years, someone had shown that the Eldrani could be defeated. Officials rushed onto the arena floor. Medical teams surrounded Jake, trying to treat his wounds. Other officials approached Vela, offering their assistance. She waved them away. "I wish to make a request," she said loudly, her voice carrying through the arena. The crowd fell silent again. "I request permission to study human training methods. I wish to learn how they prepare. I wish to understand their way." "No, I wish to understand their way," crowd murmured in shock. An Eldrani princess asking to learn from a species that had been considered inferior. It was unheard of. It was impossible. Jake looked at her with surprise. "You want to learn from us?" Vela nodded. "My people have trained warriors to be perfect for 300 years. We have never lost because we have never needed to adapt, but you have shown me something. Today, perfection is not enough. What matters is what you do when perfection fails." She bowed her head, a gesture of respect that Eldrani royalty had not shown to another species in living memory. "We train to be victorious," she said. "You train to survive, and survival beats victory." Jake extended his hand again. This time it was not an offer to help her up. It was an offer of something else. Friendship, respect, a connection between two warriors who had faced each other at their best and their worst. Vela took his hand and shook it. Around them, the crowd erupted in the loudest cheers of the night. Later, historians would mark this moment as the beginning of a new era in galactic relations. The day that humanity proved its worth. The day that the Eldrani learned to respect the soft, slow, fragile creatures from a hostile planet called Earth. But in that moment there was only Jake Miller and Princess Vela, standing together in an arena full of blood and sand, understanding something that transcended species and culture and history. The universe was vast and full of dangers, and the beings who survived were not always the strongest or the fastest or the most perfect. Sometimes the beings who survived were simply the ones who refused to die. Jake Miller looked up at the stars visible through the arena ceiling. Somewhere out there was Earth. Somewhere out there were billions of humans watching their representatives stand victorious. He had done what he came to do. He had shown the galaxy what humanity could be. Now it was time to go home and prepare for whatever came next. Because that was what humans did. They prepared, they adapted, they survived, and the galaxy would never underestimate them.